Welcome to The Explainer. Today we're unpacking a genuinely fascinating text, the Absolute Divine Infinity Framework. Basically, it's an intensely rigorous model designed to do one massive thing: project human intellect from accidentally worshiping itself. We're going to dive into a monograph that literally stress tests the absolute limits of human thought, complex math, and theology.
So, to kick things off, let's stretch our minds to the absolute limit. I want you to honestly ask yourself, what is the largest concept your mind can possibly hold? I mean, whether you're imagining an endless, sprawling physical universe, or maybe the infinite depths of high-level mathematics, we're going to see exactly where that thought hits an unbreakable ceiling.
Here's our roadmap for this explainer. 1. The limits of imagination. 2. Two absolute domains. 3. Climbing the infinity ladder. 4. The cognitive idol problem. And 5. Returning to Tawhid.
Section 1. The limits of imagination. The problem with human abstraction. Now, the ADI framework acts as a highly specialized diagnostic tool for a concept called abstract idolatry. You know, we usually think of idols as physical statues made of stone or wood, but this framework identifies a very modern trap. It happens when humans accidentally start worshiping their own incredibly complex theories. Think along the lines of a final theory of physics or a mathematical universe, instead of the actual creator of those systems. It's essentially a categorical error where we mistake our absolute highest mental models for the ultimate uncreated divine. The framework actually gives itself a self-assigned score of 109.9. That is not just some random number. It represents the absolute highest structural limit a created, human-made formalization can achieve under the system's own internal grading rubric. It explicitly acknowledges its own limits, right? It's basically saying, hey, I'm a human-built tool. I am a created formal language. Now compare that 1099 to 10 to the 10th power. That massive score is strictly reserved by the ADI framework for direct, uncreated revelation, specifically Quranic metaphysics. The source text asserts that only direct revelation truly possesses divine authorship and architecture. So what does this tell us? It proves this entire framework is built on profound epistemic humility. That 1099 ceiling guarantees the human framework will always remain categorically subordinate to actual revelation. Moving on to Section 2. Two absolute domains, the core ontology of ADI. First up, we have Domain D. Literally everything your mind can conceptualize lives strictly inside Domain D, the realm of the created. And we're not just talking about physical matter like planets and galaxies here. This includes theoretical physics, unseen realms, totally formless concepts, the laws of logic themselves, and every single infinite mathematical tower you could possibly dream up. If it is originated, if it can be modeled, or even hypothetically imagined as a structure, boom, it belongs squarely in Domain D. But above all those created models sits Domain G. This represents the uncreated divine essence, which depends on absolutely nothing. It's entirely independent, totally absolute, and not originated by anything else whatsoever. So Domain G isn't just, the top floor of our universe. It's a categorically different reality altogether. This brilliantly illustrates the central axiom of the entire text. If you want to think about it in mathematical notation, the framework basically states that Domain D intersecting with Domain G equals the empty set. They have absolutely zero overlap. None. No matter how expansive or infinite or unimaginably complex creation gets over in Domain D, it never ever magically crosses over to share the uncreated essence of Domain G. Creation depends on the creator, for sure, but creation is never the creator. Okay, Section 3. Climbing the infinity ladder. Ascending the spatiotemporal construct. Let's test this boundary, shall we? If we journey through the history and, honestly, the future of mathematical thought, we start at T0 with standard mathematics, things like the infinite set of real numbers. The framework calls these beta infinities, basically lower-order infinities. Now, even if you start mapping functions of functions of functions, these massive mathematical towers that completely short-circuit the human brain, you're still just dealing with beta infinities. Eventually, if you push the spatiotemporal cognitive construct to its absolute breaking point, its maximum limit, you hit a solid ceiling. The text calls this ceiling the alpha horizon. The crucial takeaway here is that alpha infinity is the absolute maximum concept your mind can structurally process. It totally dominates all those lower-order beta infinities we just talked about. But, and this is the critical catch, it is still completely trapped inside Domain D. It might be the absolute ceiling of our cognitive construct, but it is definitely not divine. So you might be wondering, what if we try to transcend the mind itself? What if we literally try to leap beyond that alpha ceiling? Well, the text introduces something called a meta-transcendence operator. Basically, by applying this operator to alpha infinity, you generate omega infinity. And the crazy thing is, you can do this endlessly. You can iterate up and up into what the framework calls the omega hierarchy, building brand new trans-finite realities out of pure abstract thought. But wait, the text rigorously proves that no matter how many times you multiply infinities by infinities, a created meta-transcendence will never magically transform into the uncreated creator. The total omega horizon is vast beyond any human comprehension, absolutely. Yet it remains fundamentally created. It's like you're endlessly riding a super fast elevator inside domain D. You can go up infinite floors, sure, but you are still stuck inside the same building. Which leads us to section 4, the cognitive idol problem, when intellect becomes an idol.
The text provides an incredible breakdown of what it calls the false deity ladder. It maps out exactly how human idolatry evolves over time. We start at the bottom by worshiping material rocks or wealth. Then, as we get a little more advanced, we might start worshiping the cosmos itself. Fast forward, and you have philosophers and scientists who might practically worship mathematical infinity or the laws of physics. And finally, right at the very top, is the risk of accidentally worshiping our own high-level theological concepts. And that brings us directly to the cognitive idol theorem. The text delivers a massive reality check here. It states that even your absolute purest, most mathematically perfect, and philosophically sound concept of the divine is, at the end of the day, just a cognitive model. It relies on your physical brain, your language, your memory. It's an incredibly useful model, absolutely. But worshiping the model itself, that's a profound category error. As the saying goes, the map is not the territory. Finally, we arrive at section 5, returning to Tawhid, the boundary that cannot be crossed.
So when faced with true, uncreated reality, the framework invokes this powerful concept of Sifr. Basically, when compared to the uncreated, every infinite universe, every simulated reality, and every massive mathematical function tower we've talked about practically reduces to Sifr, which means 0, in terms of ultimate independence. Despite how vast they seem to us, they possess absolutely no ultimate ultimacy.
To keep us from falling into these intellectual traps, the ADI sets out some very strict safeguards. It explicitly warns readers, do not worship this framework. Never collapse domain D into domain G. It constantly reminds us to use math, physics, and philosophy as exactly what they are. Beautiful, created tools. We should use them, but we should never deify them. And this brings us to what is essentially the mic drop of the entire monograph. Everything created points to Allah, depends on Allah, and is sustained by Allah, but nothing created is Allah. It just perfectly summarizes that impassable, categorical boundary between the absolute peak of created architecture and the pure, uncreated essence of the divine. We have scaled the absolute highest infinities today, exploring a framework that demands ultimate epistemic humility. But the final question remains, and it's one for you to deeply reflect on. As your knowledge of the universe, of mathematics, and of theology grows, are you worshiping the creator or just an infinitely large concept inside your own mind?